Before we get into today's video, I want to ask this question. Do you want the Broncos to trade back into round number 1 of the NFL draft? Knowing it's going to cost a lot of picks and even some players potentially, is that an avenue you would like to see the Broncos explore? Let me know what you think. T for trade or P for pass? Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Matthew Peterson. Coming up on today's show, we're going to look at the latest Broncos news and rumors, a potential Bradley Chubb trade to help the Broncos get some higher picks in the NFL draft. Plus, could Denver be looking to sign Cam Newton? Because it sure looks like he wants to get himself back in the league. And then we'll wrap up the video by talking about potentially Melvin Gordon returning to Mile High. First things first, though. A trade idea I kind of have for the NFL draft because the Broncos don't pick until the final pick in the second round with the 64th overall pick. So maybe George Paton goes, you know what? There's so many great playmakers and contributors in this draft class. I don't want to wait around and just eat, peanuts and have some pizza in the draft room waiting all that time. I want to make some noise. I want to trade Bradley Chubb. How do you feel, right? So here's my mock trade idea. Broncos move up in the second round. They get to the Lions spot at number 34 overall. And in return, Detroit gets Bradley Chubb, Denver's second-round pick, the last pick in round number 2, and a sixth-round pick because, you just got to toss in day 3 picks to make things work sometimes. So at the end, it's pretty much Bradley Chubb and swapping 2 seconds, but it's a big jump, right? You move up from 64 to 34, so a 30-spot jump right there. And if they were to move that high up, this is the player I'd like to see Denver get. An absolute mauler of a right tackle out of Central Michigan, Bernhard Raimann. The 6'6", 303-pound right tackle, originally from Austria, started off as a tight end, and then they probably realized, you're 6'6" and almost 300 pounds. I think we could better utilize you somewhere else on the roster. Now, I think he'd walk in and he'd be the starting right tackle. We've seen Denver make some contingency plans so far, signing Billy Turner, re-signing Calvin Anderson, getting Tom Compton from the San Francisco 49ers. So they've got some nice depth pieces right there, but none of those players really feel like they are going to be a starting right tackle in the NFL for years to come. And I've said this before, but I'll beat this horse again, all right? I don't see why you trade for Russell Wilson and not give him a top offensive line to work with. Denver was in the bottom half of the NFL last season, the offensive line, and they're bringing back pretty much every single starter except for the right tackle side. Bobby Massey, unlikely to come back. So to replace Massey with Billy Turner, I don't see much of an improvement right there. And plus, a good thing about Rainmann is that, sure, he was on Central Michigan, so he didn't play against the top talent in college football. But in the third week of the season, when the Chippewas went down to Baton Rouge and took on the LSU Tigers, he bullied that team. He pushed them around, did not give up a sack. So when he went up against some of the best edge rushers, and sure, LSU not having a great season, but still, it's a little better than the likes you see at Akron or something like that in the MAC. No offense, love the MAC. But this guy went out and he played with some of the best out there when he was down in LSU playing against the Tigers. So with that all being said, should the Broncos trade Bradley Chubb? We'll look at his stats in just a moment, but just kind of on the surface. Y for yes, N for no. If you'd like to see Denver go out and trade for Chubb, or trade Chubb. In 4 years at Mile High, Bradley Chubb got off to that great start his rookie season, right? Played all 16 games with Von Miller, double-digit sack count number, and you're like, you know what? This is going to be a great edge-rushing duo right here, Miller and Chubb, for years to come. And then the injuries, and it's unfortunate because when Chubb was hurt, Miller was healthy. When Miller was hurt, Chubb was healthy. You never got the two of them back on the same page ever really again. A couple games here and there, but last season Chubb didn't record a sack. Had that ankle injury in week 2, probably came back a little too early against the Jags, and then didn't see him till later in the year, and he never really made much of an impact and never really got his feet wet. As for 2020, played in 14 games, didn't have Von Miller, and you saw he only had 7.5 sacks. So when teams had to focus him, in on him a little more, and he doesn't have Batman on the other side, Robin gets exposed. So I think Bradley Chubb is going to be a good edge rusher, and I don't think he'll end up getting traded. But I do think it's, an idea, especially this day in the NFL, where anything's possible. Tyreek Hill, Tom Brady returning, Russell Wilson for crying out loud, Watson changing his mind. don't put it past George Paton to try and pull off a big blockbuster move. Well, maybe not blockbuster, but to get himself some extra draft capital and move up a little bit. Next up on the show, teams are apparently interested in Cam Newton. Well, that's what Adam Schefter wants us to believe. We will explore the idea of maybe Denver trying to bring Cam in to be the backup for Russell Wilson and what that all could entail. But first, we have a ton of work to do against our Kansas City Chiefs channel here at Chat Sports. They got us by a healthy 2,000 sub lead, but we have till week 1 to catch up to them. And you know what? There's only one team that got worse in the AFC West this year, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you can't stand the Chefs and you want to make up some ground not only in sub count, but also in the division and not see them win their 6th, 7th, whatever it is, straight division title, go ahead and hit that big red button. Adam Schefter tweeted out this morning, what a good tweet for Cam Newton to wake up to. Free agent QB Cam Newton is drawing interest, but also is remaining patient. I have teams that are interested in signing me. All right, maybe teams in Canada. Newton texted, I am waiting on the best fit as it pertains to winning a championship and getting a fair chance to play. Well, Cam, I can't guarantee you a chance to play much in Denver because they got a guy named Russell Wilson. But in terms of winning a championship, yeah, the Broncos seem like that could be a good fit for Cam Newton if that's what he's looking for. So Cam played a handful of games this past season for the Carolina Panthers. Remember that first game against the Cardinals? Like in 2 snaps, he had 2 touchdowns, and then it only went downhill from there. And I think what we saw was the reason why no team was interested in him in the offseason before was the injuries in Carolina were very real, and they got exposed over the last 2 seasons. He is not the MVP he once was. He's not the guy we all saw, losing the Super Bowl, but still had that great 2015 season. Cam Newton is just objectively not a good quarterback anymore, but his name's Cam Newton, so we're going to talk about him. But with that all being said, what do you want Newton as the backup QB? There's no question. I don't think he's going to start anywhere this season. Maybe he wants to go somewhere he feels the competition's a little loose and he could try, to really make a nice push for himself in August to get that starting role. 1 for yes or 2 for no if you'd like to see Cam as the backup. I think backup Cam does offer you some flexibility, okay? So if you're first-year head coach Nathaniel Hackett calling some plays, Cam Newton, he can bring in some nice red zone packages. I'm not saying – Russell Wilson's one of those quarterbacks that you really should never take out of the game because he's great in the red zone too. He doesn't need any help in any really department of the field. But you could bring in some 2 QB sets, really put some pretzels in the defenders' heads and try and figure out what they're doing. I'm just trying to, justify if the Broncos were to bring in Cam Newton. I don't think this is a move that Denver really needs to make. They've got Josh Johnson. He's pretty much worn every jersey under the sun, so decent backup right there. But Cam does offer you a little bit of excitement, all right? I think we can put it that way. Coming up next, should the Broncos bring back Melvin Gordon, the free agent running back who's getting up in the age department? We'll see if Denver maybe wants to reunite him with Javonte Williams and run it back for another season. First, if you cannot wait for the NFL draft like I can't, and you love the hats that the players get, when they go up and give Goodell one of those fake hugs and they put it right on, well, you could be wearing one of those when you go to chatsports.com/Broncos hat. The link's in the comments and the description of the show, so make sure you check it out. Make sure you get yourself the same gear that all the players are going to be wearing in the NFL draft, which is crazy enough to say less than a month away. So get yourself hooked up at chatsports.com/Broncos hat. Back to Melvin Gordon, though. So the veteran running back who started with LA, came over to Denver, and last season, hand up, he exceeded my expectations. Nearly went for 1,000 yards. If he doesn't get a little nicked up, remember he missed that Sunday Night Football game against the Chiefs? Maybe a game where Javonte Williams went off too, but maybe he gets over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. So George Paton and the rest of the execs and the coaches are in Florida at the owners and execs meeting, and a reporter asked him, hey, what's the chances of Gordon and maybe Kareem Jackson too coming back to Denver? And here's what Paton said. We've spoken with both of their agents. It's ongoing. We'd love to bring everyone back, but we just can't do it. But we're still talking with those 2 really good players. So not a big sign of confidence right there that Gordon should not sell his house in Denver. But if you look at what he did in 2021, closer look right there. Those 3 fumbles always came at costly times too. That was kind of a downer. I remember that Eagles game when he just kind of coughed it up when I felt like the Broncos were going to have a change in momentum. But Gordon and Williams, could be a pretty good duo. I don't have much faith in Mike Boone. I know that's one of Paton's guys from his time in Minnesota, but we saw very little of him last season. He got injured in training camp, and personally, I think it's time to unleash Javonte Williams. So I don't want to bring Melvin Gordon back if that's going to handcuff a guy you spent a top draft pick on a season ago. Let him get his carries. Also, Gordon at this point, not being signed in free agency, likely means that the Broncos are not going to get a high comp pick. So what that means is if a team loses a free agent to another team, based on how big of a contract they sign and how good they are, the NFL has some formula that goes, all right, in the next draft, you can get a pick ranging from rounds 3 through 7. If no one's interested in him at this point, no one's going to break out the bank for him. So it's not like Denver's going to miss out on a 4th-round pick because they let a different team sign him. So on a vet minimum salary, I guess why not? You know that it worked pretty well last year. Him and Williams were a great 1-2 punch. I'd envision it to be different this go-around with Williams getting more carries than Gordon. But it worked pretty well last year. And so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. But what do you think? Would you re-sign Melvin Gordon? Put his jersey number down below 25 if you want to see Gordon come back to Mile High. Or if you're like, you know what, been a good couple of years, but let's ultimately shake hands and go our different ways. Let me know what you think down below. That's going to do it for us here on today's show. We're going to catch up with you guys later with the latest Broncos news and rumors.